Oh boy. Whoops.
CGQ Plus.
All right, boys and girls. So it's been a while since we did an episode of Flashback, so we have a lot to talk about today. So we're just gonna get right into it, I guess. Obviously, I've got a lot of postcards and whatnot to go through. And then first, I mean, I don't really know why I'm showing this, but there's this place I go to in the Bay Area with my wife. It's like this nice little street in one of the towns there. And whenever we go there, there's like this consignment toy store that I go into because they sell old video games because people take them there and sell them on consignment. And I used to always find cool stuff there, like not like rare stuff or like super good deals, but like I used to go in there and find like Sega Master System games or whatever. And that's pretty cool because I mean, normally I don't go to video game stores. So for me, that's like sort of an event. And so I saw this and I bought it. I probably overpaid for it, but I got a box complete copy of RBI Baseball for the NES. And this is after Tengen had gone rogue and eschewed the official license. And so this is like the black label. And I don't know. I just thought it was cool because you see what kind of stuff comes with these unlicensed games. So obviously you've got the unlicensed black cartridge that Tengen was known for. And this even came with like the original dust cover and a poster. So because these weren't licensed games, you didn't get like that black plastic dust cover. You got this Tengen cardboard dust cover. And then they, you know, I guess maybe just to be cheeky or whatever, they did their own seal of quality. They have the Tengen seal of quality instead of the Nintendo seal of quality. One other cool thing to note, I think, is that these cartridges were actually made in the USA instead of Japan, which I thought that was kind of neat. So they were just kind of made, well, not exactly down the road, but the Bay Area is not too far. You see the instruction booklet that came with these games was quite a bit bigger. And then lastly, it came with a poster, which I thought was going to have like a bunch of different games on it. But it's just an RBI Baseball poster. But I don't know. I just thought that's the kind of thing I would have hung on my wall when I was a kid. But obviously, whoever owned this game didn't feel the same way. So I don't know. I don't know why. I just thought that was kind of cool. And then also on the same trip, I don't have them within arm's reach. But I went to half price books for the first time. I'd always heard about half price books. I guess it's kind of similar to Bookman's. I've mentioned Bookman's before. I would go to Bookman's like in Phoenix. But around here, we have half price books. And so I went to the one in Berkeley, and obviously they sell video games as well, but I mean, they kind of will sell pretty much anything. Like they even sell used magazines. And so I went over to the video game section. I didn't find any video games that I wanted, but they had a couple of old copies of, like they had like a Retro Gamer annual and then some other kind of, well, they're just right here. But normally, I'm just mentioning this because normally when I buy these, they're about 20 bucks. Yeah, actually has the original price tag on here. These were both $20 off the newsstand, and I do buy these sometimes, but they're pretty expensive. And so the first one I got here, I got this Retro Gamer Annual, and I got this Classic Gaming Volume 2, the Ultimate Guide to Retro Gaming. This is also from Future, so it's the same publisher. I have some of these, but I don't have this issue. And again, it's just sort of like a beefier magazine than a normal Retro Gamer. You know, it's about twice as thick. And they were each $1.99. So how can you say no to that? So I thought that was pretty cool that I found those. That's the only three things I found. And then anyway, obviously the Classic Gaming Quarterly P.O. Box has still been going full steam. The first one I've got here, I actually got this one kind of a while ago, and I think somehow I just... maybe I had put it in the wrong place or something because I forgot to show it. And then I also forgot to send this guy a postcard for a while. But I sent him his postcard, but I just felt bad that I guess it was bound to happen at some point that, you know, something was going to get put in the wrong place or whatever. But this, actually, he wrote so much on this postcard, so I'll just show the postcard here. So it's got this, we call it Moomin, this children's character. And then he actually wrote so much on here that he had to put it in a separate envelope, which I thought was pretty cool. So anytime this show can inspire anybody to write that much, that's got to be a good thing, right? But he sent this to us from Turku, Finland. And, you know, mentioned on the show multiple times that I've been to Finland. That's where that sign came from, was Finland. And Turku is actually where I went in Finland. So if you're ever looking for a place to go on vacation that's a little bit off the beaten path, I can say that Turku, Finland is a beautiful city, as long as you go around this time of the year so that it's light out. I just had an awesome time there. So I don't know how to say your name. Juho. It's Juho. I don't know if that's Juho or I don't know. I'll butcher it. But thank you for that. And then we got one other thing that came in an envelope, and this came from James in Lake Linden, Michigan. He just says, I bought some PlayStation magazines off eBay, and one of them still had Street Fighter stickers in it. I hope you like these. And then he just took the page of stickers out and sent it to me. And I don't know if anybody recognizes this, but so this probably came out of a issue of PSM. And what these are stickers for your memory card. So like all of these stickers up here would go on the face, and then down here are like end label stickers. And then I've just got a small stack of postcards here. We can go through these pretty quick. The first one here comes from Chris in Seminole, Florida, and it shows Redington Beaches, it says, in Florida. That looks pretty awesome. I've never been to Florida. They're obviously famous for their beaches, and you can see why. Next one comes from Canada. This is from Mark in Winnipeg. Mark, I was rooting for the Jets in the playoffs this year. I would really like to see the Stanley Cup go back to Canada. So sorry about the Las Vegas Golden Knights. But anyway, so this is from some place called the Forks in Canada. It says the Forks Market, and then it just says where it is there. But I don't know, that looks pretty neat. As I've said before, I've never really been to Canada, but I would like to go. The next one, this is kind of a risque postcard, so if your kids are watching, you may want to avert their eyes. Actually, the next two postcards. This comes from Oliver in Scottsdale, Arizona. And yeah, you can see, as I said, a little bit racy, but this is his artwork. Oliver is an artist, and yeah, you can go to his website, oliverhibbert.com, and I full disclosure, I have not gone to your website yet, so I don't know exactly what's there, but that's pretty cool. And then he had a quick question. He says, did you ever drink Ecto Cooler in the 80s? You know, I can't say like, no, I never drank Ecto Cooler, but you know, in general, I wasn't really allowed to have that kind of stuff too much. Like, we didn't really have soda in the house, or Kool-Aid, or things like drink boxes, you know, like, or drink pouches, like what Capri Sun. That's the kind of stuff I could have at somebody else's house, but generally my parents wouldn't buy that kind of stuff just because it was full of sugar. And I know they re-released Ecto Cooler, and I didn't get it this time either, because for me, I don't really have any memories of the stuff. So, and then this next one comes from David in Malibu. And David, you didn't put a return address, so just once again, if you do want a postcard, just shoot me an email, and I'll get you one. And you know, that's about what most people think about when they think of Malibu, California. I just figured there's a blonde chick in a bikini like every 10 feet, right, on the beaches in Malibu. And then he actually also had a question. He said, this is kind of a dark subject, but what are your thoughts and memories of the Night Stalker? He was active in the Sacramento area in the 70s, and I was born and raised in the area at the same time. So that's really before my time, and then also I wasn't living up in this area. Next one comes from Mark, and is it Chiari? I'm not sure. In Downers Grove, Illinois, and that's a pretty cool looking postcard. He says, you never mentioned anything Disney related, so sorry if you're not a fan, but we thought the card looked cool. The card does look cool. It's not that I'm not like a Disney fan. It's just, to me, Disney was cool when I was a kid. Like I loved all the Disney cartoons. Like, my dad would rent, you know, they would have like the VHS tapes that were just like compilations of the Disney short cartoons, like Mickey Mouse cartoons. Or like, I loved Chip and Dale. But I don't know, just as I've grown up, I just, you know, some people, like, they still hang on to that, and they still are, like, Disney fans as adults. And for some reason, I'm not. But, I mean, I'm not judging, because, like, I play old video games, because that's what I really associate with being a kid. So I don't know why the Disney thing just, like, you know, it just doesn't really do anything for me anymore. I can't remember the last time I watched, like, a Disney movie or a Disney cartoon. And then we got 2 postcards from Australia. So with these, we now have postcards from 5 of the 7 continents of the world. So we're missing Africa, which, you know, I feel like shouldn't be too hard. I mean, I know I have viewers in the Middle East, so I would think I probably have some viewers in North Africa as well. Or maybe South Africa. I don't really know. So hopefully I'm keeping my eye out. Hopefully we can get a postcard from Africa. And then, like, my real white whale is if we could get a postcard from Antarctica. Now, that is probably not going to happen. But I did look, and there's a visitor center in Antarctica, and I'm sure they sell postcards. And I assume they must have a post office. I mean, there are some people that live there for, you know, research purposes or whatever. But anyway, I just think it's pretty awesome. I mean, how long we've been doing this postcard thing? It doesn't seem like that long. We've already got 5 of the 7 continents of the world covered. I mean, that's pretty cool. So the first one here is from Queensland. It says, this is from Luke in Brisbane. And that's a pretty stereotypical, what I would expect an Australian postcard to look like. I've only known a couple people who have gone to visit Australia, but they all come back raving about it. So guy says he found my channel, he found the Super Nintendo launch video because he bought his son a Super Nintendo Mini, and he just wanted to learn a little bit more about the console's beginning. So that's pretty awesome. And I forgot which one of these postcards the person was saying that they actually found this channel. They're not into video games. They found this channel just because of, like, I don't know, the childhood nostalgia or something. So I thought that was pretty cool. I wouldn't have ever expected anybody to sort of find this channel and have it not be because of video games. So I thought that was pretty awesome. And then the last one we got here from Australia actually came in a package. I have 2 packages I have to show you guys real quick. So this one you see is from Canberra, Australia. Canberra, I'm probably not saying that right, but Canberra is the capital of Australia. And then that, the big picture there, like, that's their parliamentary building. I mean, look at that. That looks pretty awesome. And so this came from this guy, Jason, in Canberra, and he sent a whole package. And this just came out of an offhanded comment I made on Twitter one day, because I was drinking instant coffee, and I just made, I don't know, you know, it's the kind of post that used to annoy me on Twitter when people would just post, like, seemingly meaningless stuff. I just made some comment about how, like, you know, instant coffee is really not that bad. And, you know, people say, like, oh, instant coffee, that's the worst, you know, but as I said in that Twitter post, like, I've paid for cups of coffee that weren't as good as instant cups of coffee that I've had. So, and this guy, Jason, he chimed in and said that, you know, they had this brand of instant coffee in Australia that's supposedly, like, super good. And he's like, oh, I'll send you some. And then I don't know if you guys know Demetris from Modern Vintage Gamer. He chimed in and kind of co-signed that and said, yeah, that stuff's really good. And that you have to drink it with these certain cookies. And that was like an awesome, like, you know, duo or whatever. And so the guy was like, oh yeah, I'll send you guys some stuff. And sure enough, I'd completely forgotten about it, because to me it was just like an offhand Twitter comment. But he sent me some stuff, and apparently he sent Demetris, excuse me, some stuff too, which is pretty awesome. And I see how much it cost you in shipping to send this stuff. And so I really do appreciate it, because that certainly wasn't cheap. And it's one of those things where the shipping ended up costing more than the stuff that he shipped, sadly. And so he sent me 2 jars of this Moccona, is that how you say it? Moccona instant coffee. And they're just the same jar. I'm just going to keep one here at home, take one to work. Because, you know, if it's as good as they say it is, I'm sure I'm going to like it. You know, I'm not, you know, you get people who are like coffee snobs the same way you get people who are beer snobs. And like for me, like I appreciate like a really good cup of coffee the same way that I appreciate like really good beer. But at the end of the day, I'll drink whatever, you know, I mean, it's means to an end, right? And then I had never heard of these cookies. They're Tim Tams. I haven't opened any of this stuff yet because I wanted to record this first. So I got this stuff the day before yesterday, and I'm kind of waiting to open it. So I mean, the cookies look like they're like chocolate. Like imagine maybe something similar to an Oreo. We have like 2 chocolate cookies, and then there's some kind of like chocolate filling in between them, and then it's dipped in chocolate. So that should be cool. And then he says on the postcard that I need to look up Tim Tam straw. And so I looked up what a Tim Tam straw is. Like so these cookies are like little rectangles, and apparently you bite 2 opposing corners of the cookie off, and then you can like suck the coffee through the guts of the cookie. So I'm definitely going to do that. But so thanks so much, Jason. I can't wait to try these. And again, like I said, I was only waiting to record this. I thought it would be kind of poor form if I was showing off, you know, a half-eaten bag of cookies. So that's that package. And then we also got a little care package from Chris with a K in Connecticut. You guys might remember he sent me the postcard from Yale. And he reached out and mentioned to me that he had a video game magazine that he wanted to give me if I needed it. And so I checked to make sure that I didn't have it, and sure enough, I didn't. I actually have a lot of issues of this magazine, but I don't have this one. This is sort of later on. Most of my issues are early in the going. And that is Sega Visions. And this one is the June-July 1994 issue. So like I said, this is a little bit later on. I think Sega Visions started in, I want to say late 1990, but I didn't check. And for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, Sega Visions was Sega's version of like Nintendo Power. That's all I was expecting, because that's what he said he was going to send me. But he ended up sending me a little bit more than that. It also had this comic book. And it's funny, whenever I go into a comic book store, I always ask about these, and the proprietor or whatever always looks at me like I've got bugs crawling out of my ears because they've never heard of this stuff, which I don't. Especially in this day and age when video games are so popular, retro video games. So this particular issue, this is Game Boy #1. But it was these Nintendo comics that Valiant put out. And they called it the Nintendo Comic System. I don't know if you can see that there. I might be more excited about this than the rest of the stuff. This was pretty sweet. He sent me this Electronics Boutique catalog. Check that out. And that is from August of 1992. So you see you've got the Genesis and the Super Nintendo on there. Only thing disappointing, they don't put prices in here, which I don't know. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. I mean, there's the prices on the cover here. It's 99 bucks for either a Super Nintendo or a Genesis, but you know, there's all these games in here and none of them have prices on them. I don't know why that even really matters, but I think it would be cool if we gave this a flick through. But I'll just make that its own video because this is already going to be too long of a video. So I'll just upload that separately. But yeah, so thank you everybody. Any of those postcards except for the Moomin one, I have not put your postcard in the mail yet, just as I kind of fell behind. I will get to it right away. And just for anybody else, if you send a postcard into the show and then you see it featured on the show and then you haven't gotten a postcard back within, I would say, a month, please send me an email, because it's quite possible that yours just somehow either got lost in the mail or somehow I didn't send you a postcard because of just some confusion on my end. So that's it for that. So now let's get to the meat of the potato. So it's the middle of June right now. And as I think I've said before, anytime this time of the year rolls around, my mind really goes back to the last days of school of my youth. And, you know, we talked about this already on another episode of Flashback, where I was talking about just summer vacation and sort of how my feelings towards the last day of school changed through the years. You know, in elementary school, it was really kind of a bummer for me. Whereas when it was, you know, by the time I got to high school, the last day of school just couldn't come fast enough. And the last day of school of 6th grade was probably the saddest I ever was on a last day of school. And you know, I was in 6th grade. I was in a class. I mean, I'm not trying to sound braggy. I was in a class where they put all the what they deemed to be the smarter kids or whatever. It was called a GATE class. And the class was run a little bit differently than your standard class. Like we worked a lot more like just sort of independently. We had a lot of independent study time. It wasn't just the teacher standing up at the front of the classroom like lecturing all day. And so we worked together a lot more. And as a class, I would say we really kind of bonded. You know, even though you had kids in the class who were like, you know, like kids who were maybe more popular socially, or you had like rich kids, you had like really dirt poor kids. We had a couple of kids in that class who were like dirt poor. But, and I think if we had just been out in the general population of the school, we wouldn't have probably been friends or whatever, just because we'd probably hang out with different people. But somehow, because we were all in sort of this special class together, like none of that mattered. Other stuff mattered. And I think we were all pretty good friends in that class. And so when the last day of school came around, it was kind of a bummer because we were, for the most part, we were going to go our separate ways, I guess. But so for us, this was our last day of elementary school before moving on to middle school, which was a pretty big jump, you know, or felt like it at the time. In some ways, when I look back at my childhood, 6th grade was sort of the peak. Like, I think that was my favorite year of my childhood. And, but so anyway, but, you know, all good things have to come to an end, and that came to an end. And, you know, pretty quickly, I guess I just sort of mentally moved on to, you know, whatever was coming next. And plus I had summer vacation coming up. And so that summer, you know, I ended up going and spending a lot of time with my dad again. That was pretty normal. And I can actually, it's odd. I can tell you the date that I went up to my dad's. It was June 23rd. And I remember that because that was the day that Batman came out, the movie Batman. That was the first movie I ever saw the day it came out, and was the first time I ever waited in line to see a movie. And I saw it by myself, so I don't know, maybe it was PG-13, I don't really remember. But I remember like my dad or my stepmom or whoever just dropped me off at the movie theater, and I went and I got in line and waited to see it. And the reason I wanted to see it so bad was that I was actually a pretty big Batman fan. I think, you know, I mentioned that like a year earlier, my uncle and my cousin had come out to visit, and that's when I got Super Pitfall and TNC Surf Designs for the NES. But at the same time, my cousin, I mentioned that he was like 7 or 8, 9 years older than me. Like I was like 10 or 11. He was like 18, 19. And he was really into comic books. And so when he came out, like I think we either went to a comic book store or we just went somewhere else that sold comic books, like a bookstore. And like he bought me a few comics, and he's trying to show me like, you know, these are the cool ones, those are stupid, or, you know, whatever. And he kind of got me into comic books. And so I would start going to the comic book stores back where I lived and buying up comics. But, you know, I kind of wanted to have a comic book superhero that I was going to decide that was going to be like my guy. And so I just kind of picked Batman. I said, I'm going to just, you know, I'm going to start reading the Batman comics. I mean, I like Batman. Around that time, they were showing the old Adam West, you know, Batman live action TV series from the 60s on TV after school. So I'd come home and I'd watch that. And I would go to the comic book stores and I would buy up back issues of Batman, because they weren't really worth anything. Because this was the first, this 89, you know, Michael Keaton Batman movie was the first Batman movie, right? Before that, Batman was just like whatever, like he wasn't really that popular. So I was going and I was buying like back issues from like the 70s for like 50 cents, 75 cents a piece, and just reading them because I just thought they were cool. And then, so when the Batman movie was announced, I got pretty excited about that, you know, and then I went and saw it, but then now all of a sudden everybody had like Batman fever, and it kind of, I'm not going to say it ruined it for me, but, you know, it wasn't like it was cool anymore to like Batman, because now everybody liked Batman. So there were some other cool movies that came out that summer too that I saw, like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was one of the big summer movies. I know some people don't like that one as much as the others. Like, I think all three of those movies are great, so so I like those a lot. I think like a friend of my parents took me to see that one. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out that summer, which, you know, you can look back at that now and be like, well, that was kind of a stupid movie or whatever. But, you know, it was a movie for kids, and speaking as a kid, we thought that was cool. Field of Dreams, I saw that one in the movie theater. That one was pretty cool. And then the two others, so UHF came out that summer, and I wanted to go see that one. And the summer of '89, so we're talking about the summer of '89, was the first time I ever went out on a date. And I think I could swear I told that story already, that I went out on a date with a girl, summer of '89. And I wanted to go see UHF. That's what when I asked her out on this day, I said, oh, well, we can go see UHF, you know. And somehow we ended up not seeing UHF. I could swear like it was because her parents didn't want us to see it or something. I don't know. Because I remember it was her dad that like drove us to the movie theater and dropped us off. And what we ended up seeing instead was Parenthood, which Parenthood's a good movie. It's a Ron Howard movie, you know, has Steve Martin in it, has Rick Moranis in it. And it's a cool movie, but it's like, you know, her and I were each like, what, 12? So like, you know, I don't know. I don't know why we want to see it, but I mean, I enjoyed it. And then I remember after the movie, we went to Wendy's and she showed me, I'd never heard of doing this. She introduced me to the concept of dipping your French fries in your Frosty, which is really good because it's sweet and it's salty and it's hot and it's cold. And I mean, what do people dip French fries in, right? Ketchup, which is just sugar, right? So is it really that much of a leap to say I'm going to dip it in a Frosty instead? So I don't know. That was pretty good. I did end up seeing UHF. I can't say for sure it was in the movie theater, but I'm pretty sure. I'm guessing that probably Jonathan and I went and saw UHF after I went back to my mom's house. So in the fall, I started middle school, which was a pretty big change. So like I said, for us, middle school was 7th and 8th grade. And when you get to middle school, no longer do you have just one class all day with one teacher. Now you have like 6 classes with 6 different teachers. It's almost kind of like a rite of passage too. Like you kind of felt, it made you feel a little bit older, you know, like, well, now I've got a locker and I have to go to all my different classes. And maybe now it seems silly, but I remember at the time, it's like, well, you're not a baby anymore. Like now you're in junior high school, like for whatever that's worth. And one of the other cool things I remember about my junior high, and I got these out because I want to see if anybody else remembers these. So the library in my junior high had a pencil machine. And I'll try to put up a picture. I have found it before on the internet, so I'll try to put up a picture of this pencil machine. And it was 15 cents. You'd put in a nickel and a dime, and you'd like turn a little crank or whatever, and a pencil would come out. And but the cool thing they did, I mean, because they could have just like stocked the pencil machine with like, you know, Dixon Ticonderogas or whatever, just your standard yellow school pencil, and none of us would have cared. But I don't know if it was the librarian or whoever was in charge of this pencil machine was very smart, and they stocked the machine with these NFL pencils. Anytime you had 15 cents in your pocket, we'd go in there and you'd you know, put it in there, and you know, you'd pull the arm on the one-armed bandit, because to us it was like gambling, because you know, we saw these pencils as being collectible and tradable, and of course we used them as well, but not if you got a good one. Then you wouldn't use it. And at that time, the good ones to get, because of where I lived, of course, the 49ers pencils were the good ones to get, for me at least, and most of my friends. I don't know if it's going to focus on that or not, but I got a bunch of these off of eBay. Somebody was selling like a whole bag of them. And that was like the most coveted pencils to get. So you either get that and you wouldn't sharpen it, or maybe you'd sharpen it, but you'd only use it on like a test. Like it would be like your lucky pencil. The other cool ones to get, and I don't think I have any here. Again, just because of where we lived, if you could get a Raiders pencil, because a lot of kids at the school weren't Niners fans, they're Raiders fan. But if you got a Raiders pencil, you could trade it, because maybe they had a 49ers pencil. I don't have any Raiders pencils here. I also don't have any Cowboys pencils. That would have been the other big one, because I mean, everybody's always loved the Cowboys. And then I just remember, like, there's a Bills pencil. I remember having one of those and using it as a kid. I just like the coloration on it. And like it's got like, here's a Broncos pencil with, of course, their old logo and their the older colors, the brighter orange there. And you got like here's a Buccaneers one that actually has like the little, it's not focusing on the pencil, I don't think, but has the little Buccaneer guy on it there. And I don't know, I guess that's about it. Well, here's an LA Rams. So this was cool for a while, but then the Rams moved back to LA, and so now I guess it's not a big deal anymore. But I mean, we love this pencil machine. It was one of the 2 things you wanted to spend your money on campus if you had change in your pocket. The other one was every day at like recess, excuse me. I guess recess is probably between second and third period. You could walk over to the cafeteria, And one of the lunch ladies had like this big cart that she would bring out, and it was full of junk food. And you could buy, you know, a bag of chips or whatever. And I remember Jonathan and I would go over there every day, and I would always try to have the money in my pocket. It was probably something like 35 cents. It wasn't expensive. And you could buy like a bag of chips or whatever. And they had this cheddar cheese popcorn. It was like Laura Scudder's cheddar cheese popcorn or something. And man, we loved that stuff. And so I'd try to get that like every single day. So it was just that and these pencils. I don't know. Those are both just good memories of junior high. The other thing I always think about with junior high is some of the teachers that I had. Because of course, in elementary school, you just have the one teacher, right? So like over the course of your elementary school career, you only went through 6 or 7 teachers, assuming you didn't move around a lot. But you got to junior high and you had like 12 teachers in just 2 years. So I guess you just had like a better chance that you would get some teacher that would be like particularly memorable or something. And there's 3 teachers that always like instantly pop into my mind when I think about junior high. And, you know, you got to think that the time where we went to school was kind of an interesting time as far as like if you were an adult in the 80s, you know, what was your background? You know, like if you were older, maybe you were born during World War II, maybe even you were a veteran of World War II and you were coming to the end of your career, or maybe you were like an ex-hippie or like, so I had my history teacher, U.S. history teacher, his name was Mr. Snyder. And Mr. Snyder was like 100% ex-hippie. Like he even like, I don't want to call him a draft dodger, but I mean, he dodged the draft in Vietnam, you know, and told us about it, if you want to call it draft dodging. So Mr. Snyder, one of his legs was longer than the other one by like an inch or a half an inch. Like he had to actually wear special shoes where one of the shoes had like built up soles or whatever so that he wasn't like standing off kilter or whatever. And he told us about it. He's like, yep, that's the only reason I didn't go to Vietnam was because I had that. And we're like, oh, you know, but he was like a total ex-hippie. And the main thing I remember about him was that every Friday for like, I don't know, the last 10 or 15 minutes of class, he would pull out his guitar. He had like an acoustic guitar that he kept in the classroom there in a bungalow. He was in a bungalow and like a temporary building. And almost every week he would hand out a new song that we were going to, it was like a sing along for 10 or 15 minutes, but it was all like 60s, like, you know, anti-war songs and stuff like that for the most part. Not all of them. Like one of the songs we did was Born to Be Wild. I mean, that's not like an anti-war song. It's just a fun song. There was a bunch, you know, like Country Joe and the Fish and stuff like that. Like just sort of like, you know, 60s protest songs. And every week, almost every week we'd learn a new one, but every week for like 10 or 15 minutes, we would all sing together, which we all looked forward to. Like everybody wanted to take Mr. Snyder's class because he was like funny and he had cool stories and cause that sing along thing. And it was kind of funny because on the flip side of Mr. Snyder, we had this guy, Mr. Reynoso. And Mr. Reynoso was one of the PE coaches, but he also ran this program that we had on campus called Cadets. And I don't know if anybody else like had cadets. It was a weird thing. So it was kind of what it sounds like. It was like this military style, like it was a class that you could just sign up for. And then you had cadets every day. And then like every Friday you had to actually wear your uniform, which was like this military style uniform. There were ranks, like some of the kids would move up the ranks a little bit and be like squad leaders or whatever. And I mean, you would just learn like some of the basics about like how to take care of your uniform, stand at attention, march, you know, respecting a chain of command. And then but the thing that always really blows my mind. Oh yeah. And they would even go, they would call it bivouac, where they would all get on a bus and they would go to a military base that used to be in Monterey called Fort Ord. And they'd go there for like a week and they'd camp and everything. And I don't know what they would do. A friend of mine at the time was in cadets. And so he would tell me about it, or, you know, he'd be gone for a week because he was off at bivouac or whatever. But anyway, the thing that would blow my mind is that they also taught marksmanship and like, you know, just basic gun safety and gun care. And they had a locked cabinet full of like 22 caliber semi-automatic rifles. And I mean, they were teaching the kids like, here's how to handle a gun, here's, you know, gun safety. They taught them how to clean. You'd take the gun apart, you had to clean it. I mean, just like if you were in like boot camp or something. And then they would teach them marksmanship. and they would do it in the class. It was like again, it was like a bungalow or a temporary building, but it was like twice as long. And they would set up like sandbags and whatnot, and everybody would have to put in hearing protection. But like, I'd be sitting in like art class or whatever, and you could hear all the gunshots, and it was just like, at the time, it wasn't a big deal. It was just like, oh yeah, they're doing their marks. But you look back on it now, and it's like, I can't imagine that there's any school in the country where they do that now. But I don't know, whatever. And, but the other thing about that whole thing that was really weird is that there was nothing like it in high school. And so like, you could take cadets even for the 2 years that you were in junior high, but then what were you going to do for 4 years? It's not like they had some kind of analogous program in high school that you could stay in. And then maybe after you graduate high school, you could, join the Army or Marines or whatever. So it was just this weird little isolated thing in junior high. But I always just sort of looked at Mr. Reynoso as just being like, just the exact opposite of Mr. Snyder, because, the guy was real, just militant, just the way he acted. He was just like this real super like macho, like he wasn't a mean guy or anything, but he was just like Mr. Macho Man. And I was just always glad I didn't have him as a PE coach, because he seemed like he'd be like a real ball buster. But, the second guy I always think of, as far as one of my teachers in junior high was, this Japanese guy named Mr. Sato. And he was my 7th grade math teacher. And, he was Japanese, but he was like Japanese American. He wasn't like from Japan. So like he didn't have like an accent or anything. He was just Japanese. But he had like this voice, like a radio DJ, like his really deep voice, and just the way he would talk, and like, X squared equals blah, 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 and salt, and whatever. But the funny part was like, cause this is the kind of thing where, I feel like going to school in like the 80s, it was sort of this line where, there are certain things that were okay for like teachers to do, or things that could happen on campus that quickly became not okay. Like firing guns on campus or whatever. But Mr. Sato was kind of, for lack of a better word, he was almost verbally abusive to some people. And there was this kid in my class named Matthew. And he was just like a really like annoying, worse than annoying, really. He was the kind of kid that would pick on other kids. And the thing is, with the wisdom of adulthood, you can look back and you realize that, well, that kid was probably getting a ration of crap at home, or, honestly, looking back on it now, I bet he had ADD just by the way he acted. He always acted kind of hyper, and he just couldn't shut up and pay attention. Which, like I said, he probably had ADD. Now, when I was a kid, ADD was not nearly as common, so I don't think it's something that teachers were really like trained to look out for. But Mr. Sato like openly hated Matthew. Like, he just did not have the patience for his crap. And really, none of us liked him either. And again, with the wisdom of adulthood, you look back on it now and you think, someone like Matthew probably just, if kids had tried to be a little bit nicer to him and maybe try to accept him or bring him into the fold, maybe he would have acted differently. But, when we were kids, public school was like, a dog eat dog world. It was every man for himself. And it's like, I don't have the time or the inclination to worry about your feelings when, you're making my life harder than it needed to be. Like Matthew used to pick on me, or, he would just make fun of me or whatever. And it's just like, you didn't have like the maturity or the wisdom to say, well, why is he doing that? Maybe if I'm nicer to him, maybe he'll knock it off. Cause it's like, I don't, you just didn't think that way. And so for us, when Mr. Sato would start making fun of Matthew, we all thought it was awesome. And anytime he would call on Matthew, like Matthew didn't know the answer. And he would always just tell him how dumb he was, and, he's an idiot or whatever. And I just remember one time he just went like, oh, Matthew, does your mother know how dumb you are? And we were all just like, ooh, like it wasn't even we were laughing. It was just like a collective, like, oh, because that was pretty bad. But that's like the main thing I remember about Mr. Sato. Because the thing is, like at the time, like nothing happened to Mr. Sato. We were all just like, oh, but now, like if Matthew hadn't gone home and told his parents what Mr. Sato said, one of us, I'm sure one of us did go tell our parents, and the parent was just like, well, whatever. But in this day and age, like I guarantee you, like Mr. Sato would have gotten in huge trouble. But it was just a different time back then. And like I said, none of us disliked him because he wasn't mean to us, Um, and then the last guy I always really think of is my PE coach. And he was the PE coach for both years I went to school there. And he was this older guy named Mr. Vanderberg. And he must have been pushing 60 when I took PE from him. And he was one of these guys, you know, like he always wore like, you know, he had his jeans on with a belt, and they had like his keys hanging off of a belt loop, and he had like a button down like cowboy style shirt with the snaps that would be like tucked in, and you know, he had like sideburns, and his hair would be like slicked back with like, you know, Brill cream or pomade or something, and he had like this like perma squint, you know? Like he was always squinting, like, you know, this is a guy who has spent his entire life outdoors and just has like perma squint. And it makes sense because he was actually a farm boy before, like, you know, he grew up and went to college and became a PE coach, but he was a farm boy before that. And, you know, he was old enough that he graduated college in like the early 50s and had been a PE coach like ever since. Like, so by the time I had him, he'd been a PE coach for like 35 years. And it's funny because I always look back on it now, and it's probably kind of maybe a mean or negative thing to say, but I always just feel like that guy had like a front row seat for like the sissification of the American young man. Because, you know, you just think about like, you know, what boys were like, you know, in like the 50s and whatnot. And they all seemed like somehow they were like 10 years older and more mature. And you know, through the years, they just, you know, became more and more immature. And like by the time I took the guy's class, like, you know, we're all running around wearing our Bugle Boy pants and you know, gel in our hair, and like our shirts are too big, and like, I don't know. I always wonder if he just looked at us and just shook his head, you know. And I imagine probably if I was a PE teacher now and I'd been doing it for the past 20 years, I'd probably have the same attitude. But I don't know. There's something about that guy I just always thought was pretty cool. I remember he never knew how to say my name, and he would always call me Alamo, you know, like the fort or whatever the hell down in Texas. And he used to always yell out, like, because, you know, one of the things that they would always make us do in PE is run around the backstops. I don't know if anybody else had to run around the backstops. You know, we had like a huge sports field that had like, you know, 3 or 4 like baseball diamonds on it. And of course, like one of them was the one that actually got used and had like little bleachers, and the other 3 weren't even really baseball diamonds. They were just like backstops at like each corner of the field in case somebody wanted to play baseball. And a common thing to do would be like, you know, they didn't want to like bring out any equipment for PE that day. And so we'd have to just run around the backstops. And so basically you were just running around the periphery of this huge field that was like several acres big, just for, you know, you'd run for 30 minutes or whatever. And I just remember he used to always yell out, "Remember the Alamo," which I always thought was kind of funny. Like he wasn't a mean guy at all. He was actually a really nice guy. He was just more like of an old school like PE coach. And like I remember junior high was the only time when it was like mandated that you had to take a shower at the end of class. You know, you go back into the locker room and you're supposed to like take your PE clothes off, and then you're supposed to go take a shower. And you know, junior high is a weird time because some boys start going through puberty and other boys don't. And, you know, so I'm just saying when you're 12, 13 years old and you're in the gym locker room, everybody's getting undressed, you can't help but notice. I'm not saying you're looking, but you can't help but, you know, you look over at somebody and you just feel, whoa, you know, and then you look down and, you know, and so you didn't really want to get in the shower because it's in some ways, it's like, it's almost like some of these guys were turning into adults and you were still just a kid. And, that kind of stuff wasn't really going to go unnoticed. You know what I'm saying? Like if you went and got in the shower and you just still had what you had and other guys had what they had, there's a pretty good chance they were going to say something. And I mean, the other thing with that was like, it's not like they provided you with towels. So you had the towel you brought from home and you'd go take a shower and then you'd put the towel in your locker, but it was like your locker was not well ventilated and you didn't have a good way to really hang it. And so like, even by day 2, that towel was going to already be stinky. You know, and by the end of the week, it had like orange rust stains on it, and it was just disgusting. So we never wanted to take a shower. And so Jonathan and I, we had PE together and we had our lockers next to each other. We would always try to like not take a shower and just hopefully they won't notice. But, you know, I think most because I remember my high school locker room was this way too, where like all the rows of lockers were like going this way, and then like the coach's office was at the end, and it was up on the second floor, and it was all glass, so that like the coaches could kind of watch over the whole locker room. And they would notice if you didn't get in the shower. I remember every once in a while, like Vanderberg would come out of his office and he would just yell like, "Shower lock." And that meant that like everybody had to get in the shower. And you were basically, you had to stay in there for like 5 minutes, like everybody. And, but then I also remember one time, he came, like he caught Jonathan and I trying to not take a shower, and he made just the two of us go take a shower. And everybody else in the locker room came and like watched, you know, and were like making fun of us and stuff, like, ooh, you know. And it's like, that's why we don't want to take showers, you know. But I mean, I guess we never kind of held that against Vanderberg. We just kind of felt like that's the rules. And like, you know, we just always made it our goal to just like get away with not taking a shower. It's like, just change as quickly as you can and get out of the locker room before he sees you. Because once you were out, you were like home free. Other things I remember from that time of the year, 89, later in 89, one of the big ones was the earthquake in San Francisco. Just because I remember coming home from school that day, and I wanted to watch the game. And like my mom wasn't home yet because she didn't get home till like 5:30 or something. And I remember it was getting close to 5 o'clock, and so I turned on the TV in my bedroom. It was that little black and white one I've talked about before, so that I could start watching the game. And then, of course, you know, famously at 5:04, that earthquake happened. And, of course, the game ended up getting canceled. I didn't feel the earthquake. Like, where we lived, we were close enough that normally when there was an earthquake in San Francisco, we would feel it. But we were far enough away that it wouldn't really knock things off the shelves or anything. It was just like if you had a chandelier, like it would be swinging. And, you know, if you were just laying in bed or something, you'd feel a little bit of the rocking or whatever. And I don't remember feeling any of that. Maybe I did, and I don't remember. But I just remember that happening because that, you know, as you know, I mean, that was a huge deal. A lot of people got killed. And, I mean, of course, the World Series got delayed. But, I mean, that, you know, so what? So the two games I remember getting from 1989, the first one, I think I got this one for my birthday, or I got it during the summer. I don't remember which. And, you know, it's funny because when I was talking about the games that I was disappointed in, you know, I was talking about how I was picking games for the wrong reasons, and I needed games that I could sink my teeth into, and that's what I should have been getting. But obviously I didn't learn from my lesson, because I ended up picking out this game, which is not a bad game. But, you know, if you'll recall when I was talking about The Legend of Zelda, I said that the reason I wanted that game was that I incorrectly thought that it was like this compilation of mini games. And it was just by kind of luck that it ended up being a good game, because I had no idea that it was actually this adventure game. But just because of, I guess, my frugality, I just felt like, well, I don't get games very often, so I should get a game, you know, that is going to have more value by having more than one game on it. So, and that's why I got this game, and that's Donkey Kong Classics. And I didn't really play it that much because, you know, it's just really repetitive because they're arcade games, and that's what they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be like playing for high score, which I wasn't really into doing. And on top of that, like, Donkey Kong wasn't really a game I played that much in the arcades. You know, like when I was going to you know, the arcade, like at Sam's Town, the three cabinets that I would say that I kept going back to were Pole Position 2, Moon Patrol, and Spy Hunter. Like I mentioned that the Spy Hunter there was like the big cabinet that you actually sat in. Like I love that. And so, you know, I'd play games of those, and I go, okay, I'll go try playing like some Vanguard or some Punch Out, or I'm sure some Donkey Kong. But to me, all of those were just like, they didn't really grab me as much as like Pole Position was really probably my favorite arcade game at the time. So I didn't have a lot of nostalgic memory really of Donkey Kong, but like I said, it's a good game, and you know, I'm not sorry I have it now. It's just at the time, you know, I can't go back and say what my other options were that day at the store or whatever. So I don't really know, but it just became another one of those games that I didn't really play that much. And then in the launch of the Sega Saturn episode, I mentioned that at one point we had gone on like a family day trip to Carmel, or Carmel by the Sea, it's called, which is kind of near Monterey. here on the California coast. And outside of Carmel is, of course, where Pebble Beach is located. And then that, of course, is where the famous Pebble Beach golf course is located. And before that, I didn't really know anything about golf. I didn't really care about golf. But, you know, we went and my dad was kind of explaining to me that this was this very famous golf course and was kind of just telling me stuff about golf that I didn't, you know, before that, I just didn't know about golf. And for some reason, I just found it very fascinating. And so, again, I don't really know when, but at some point after that trip, I ended up getting this game. And I know that I got this game from my stepmom. Like, my stepmom, she was kind of weird. Like, you know, I know I've said a lot of not nice things about her that, I mean, I stand behind. But at the same time, sometimes she would just be really generous for some reason. And she would just give me stuff or just be extra nice. And so she got me this game. I don't remember where. I don't remember when. I don't remember why. I can't imagine that this game was something she would have paid full price for at like Toys R Us. But I wonder if it was the kind of thing where we were at some other store and maybe this game was for sale there for like, you know, 20 or 30 bucks. But I ended up getting this this Bandai Golf Challenge Pebble Beach game. And, you know, it's, you know, ironic or unexpected or whatever that, you know, when I talk about all the other games I got and how disappointed I was in them, that I got this golf game and I just loved it. And I played this game so much. Like, I don't, like, almost any time I sat down to play this game, I played the entire 18 holes. And I just never got tired of it. And I don't know what it was. It's not like I started watching golf on TV. I didn't have any big interest in like starting to play golf, but I just thought this game was cool. You know, part of it is I think with golf is it's not too difficult to get decent at one of these games. I mean, as golf games go on the NES, like it's okay. Like it's better than golf. There's the Nintendo game that's just called Golf. That game is really not that good. But this game is really not bad. Like the main knock that I have on this game is that when you're aiming your shot, there's like this little cross. It almost looks like the D-pad on a controller, except that it's white. And you can move it around basically in a circle around your position. But it doesn't like sweep around like smoothly. It like has like these discrete like stopping points. You know, it's like, but you want to be able to like, you know, move it smoothly to get it right where you want it. It also, the music in the game was very repetitive, but I liked it. But you know, with neither of these games are, I think, noteworthy enough that it's worth doing like a full-on playthrough. So it's just going to be whatever gameplay footage that I showed. With the exception of games that I either got way later out of like a clearance bin or, you know, used at like a video store, these were actually the last two games that I got sort of brand new during the heyday of the Nintendo. In fact, I can only think of two more games that I had, period. And one of those came from a video store as like a previously played game, and the other one came out of the clearance bin at KB Toys. So so this is actually probably gonna be the last time we talk about a Nintendo game for a while. In the next episode of Flashback, we're going to talk about the next console, if you want to call it that, that I got, that I'm actually pretty excited to talk about. So I can't wait to get into that. But I don't know how long, this is probably a pretty long episode now I think about it. My throat hurts a little bit, so I think I've been talking for a while. So, but that's going to do it, I guess, for now. Keep an eye out. You know, I'll probably do the little quick mini read through of that awesome catalog that Chris sent us. So big thanks again to Chris. Big thanks again to Jason from Australia. Now that I've recorded this, now I can enjoy a cup of coffee and some of those Tim Tams. And thanks to the rest of you who sent postcards into the show. I really do appreciate it, and I will get yours back to you as soon as I can. So that's going to do it for this episode of CGQ Plus. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.